tips for dealing with the bank. So perhaps you're renting in a property where it is run by a body corporate.
Understanding the basic calculation, income minus expenses, and you want to be left with a positive income.
It is a very tough game. It's not easy at all.
To stay ahead of knowing exactly what your clients need, what their teething issues are.
Have a joint move-in inspection.
That a lot of people that are coming into sectional title homeowners associations are just like you described, not only first-time homeowners, but first-time owners and residents in community schemes.
They get to see the perspective from the other side of the aisle. And I think that's a really important thing to do.
It's a market that's estimated to be transacting at least 9 billion rand per year. So it's a huge market.
In order to get there, you need to be able to build up a track record.
Your cash flow model needs to be sharp.
A quote comes to mind. The best time to buy a property was about 10 years ago. The next best time is now.
Private Property celebrates women, the rule breakers, homemakers, and high flyers. Women who take up space. Women who kick off glass slippers to smash through glass ceilings. The woman who owns her own. This month we honor women, proudly owning their own. Private Property, her space, her rules.
Ready. Good evening and welcome back to the third episode of the First Time Homebuyer Show. As you know, this is the show where we speak about the do's and don'ts regarding property. I am your host, Esti Klaassen. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined. Thank you to those who are still joining. Welcome, welcome. So tonight we have a spectacular guest, someone who is really passionate about sharing her personal opinion and as well as educating people when buying property. It is none other than Nikki Russos, the principal of Just Property in Morningside and Hyde Park, Johannesburg. Welcome, Nikki. Hi, how are you?
Thanks, Esti, and thanks very much for the opportunity.
Welcome, Nikki. So I think as we, just to start off, because you know this is the show and the main important factor or that we're speaking about this evening is really the factors that one needs to consider when buying property. So maybe just introduce yourself and tell us how you got into property. And just to end that off, what was the biggest mistake you made when buying your first property?
Okay, well, how I got into property is quite simple. It was a very real factor around our dinner table from growing up. My father was an immigrant from Europe, and he always used to talk about property being something that was very necessary for one's self-esteem and feeling like a sense of oneself, and that if you owned your own home, you'd feel differently. So there was a lot of emphasis in our environment on home ownership and investing in property. So I developed a passion for property, design, property investment, development, renovations, anything related to property. And then when a friend's business was for sale, just letting at the time, franchise, I stepped in and bought it, and that was nearly 20 years ago.
Oh wow! So you've been in the industry, in the game. And what would you say was your biggest mistake when you bought your first property?
My biggest mistake was absolute ignorance. I had no one to ask about the specifics. I was in true sort of youthful style, overconfident and uninformed. So I sort of signed an offer and very little knowledge and very little understanding of things. No regrets actually, but still I could have had a lot more information and support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that is why this platform is so amazing, because I think, let me speak for myself, I would like to buy, my first property at this age. And there's so much that I wish I knew. If it wasn't for you, I don't think I'd know any of the other things, because there's a lot of people in my circle who may not necessarily be able to help me. And I think that's where you come in. You've been in the industry for years. You've also bought your own property. You're also advising people on what to do. So on that note, I think, for example, if I'd like to buy my own property, name maybe some of the factors that I really need to consider before buying my first home.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors, Esty. You know, the first thing is to really just decide why you want to buy a property.
Motivation, yeah.
In your case, you're saying it's going to be a home. So already that's a clue. Whereas if it was an investment property, that would be a different motivation. So if it's going to be your home, obviously, what are your requirements? What are your longer term requirements? Where do you want to be located? Relative to your work, relative to your friends, your lifestyle, etc. You need to have a sense of the plans for the area, because there are definitely areas where there are roads planned that you should know about. You don't want a big new complex being built directly in front of you. You should know about what's going on around you. You need to understand the condition of the property. If it's an older property, it may need more maintenance, whereas if it's a brand new property, less. The costs in general. What are the transfer costs? If it's a brand new property from a developer, you wouldn't pay transfer costs, and you need to know those kind of things because they add costs to your process. Monthly costs. Some levies are very, very high. Bigger properties, older properties where there are lifts, etc.
And I guess, sorry, Nikki, and I guess this is where you come in, right? So you basically hold the buyer's hand and help me see or help me discover what will be coming, what construction is like, especially in developing areas. This is where you come in, right? And find out all this information and basically help me decide whether or not to buy the specific property.
Yeah, you know, it's very, very important for us to understand, sort of try and get into your psyche and into your, and try to understand what's important to you. It's very, very important to us that every party wins in the process, so that there's no, in 3 months' time or 3 years' time, you don't look back and have bought at the wrong price and bought the wrong thing just because it was an easy sale for us. So it's very, very important to just know that the buyer is well informed, all the factors that are relevant, and there are no surprises.
Yeah, and I think the thing, I think we spoke about this briefly earlier, is really just the fear, you know, especially at my age, the fear of buying property. And like you said already, when I mentioned that I'd like my property to be a home, by the language that I'm speaking, you can already hear that that is my motivation. So that I'm buying property because I'd like to start a home, and not really just for, I mean, I'd also love to buy it for financial freedom, but I don't think my pockets aren't big enough for that just yet. But I do think, like you said, the motivation, and I think my biggest thing is fear, especially around the legal terms and the hidden costs especially. So maybe you can just elaborate on that, and maybe a lot of people my age don't even understand what this means. Do you break it down for us in layman terms when helping us?
There are all sorts of things. So timing of this, what happens when, what costs you have to pay when, who the different players are in the process, because you've probably, if you haven't bought a property before, you probably don't even know what a conveyancer does. You probably don't know what a bond originator does. Why do you need them? Who pays for them? All that type of thing. You know, again, when I first bought my first property, everyone was just asking me for money all the time, and I had no idea who I was paying for what and whether it was all valid, etc. So there are legalities and you know, certain rights that you have as a buyer that you need to know and be informed about. And there are also certain amazing benefits for first-time buyers that you could know about. There's some of the banks that are offering first-time buyers special bonds, arrange special finance packages. Because you're first-time buyers, professionals have also special finance packages, young professionals, which a lot of people don't know about. The government actually through a program called FLISP, I never know how to say that, but is giving special grants to people that and financial assistance to people within a certain income bracket, 3,500 to 22,000. So these are all important things to know about, which make the whole experience a lot better, just because you're more informed and know what happens when. And it's that's what we help with.
That's so good to know, about the bank and offering these certain things that we need, especially when, buying our first property. But I think a lot of people just assume that it's a trap, that I'm going to be paying so many different people and I'm not able to, I can't afford to. And I think just to emphasize on what you were saying, that there are amazing opportunities and people that help us, like you, help us decide what to buy. And I was also I saw something a little bit earlier, is that when going in to buying a property, example, I need to know, I can't just say that I would like a home. I also need to know where like you said earlier, one of the factors is where you'd like to be situated. And I think that I could be wrong. I'd like for you to correct me on this. Is it true that my dream home will only be 70%, 75% of what I really want? Regarding schools, regarding shopping centers close by, the community, the surroundings, security, will it ever be my 100% choice? Will it be mine that I wanted?
Why not? Why not? It depends. I mean, obviously on your taste as well, because that's a factor that comes into it. If you aren't achieving exactly what you want out of the property, you could perhaps change it if you've got the budget. So yes, why not? Why can't you get 100% of what you need?
Right, and that's where you come in to help me get my 100%.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I feel you can. And you may choose to compromise for various reasons for your first home, but then consciously, knowing that maybe you decide to spend a couple of 100,000 less than you'd like, but then that's for a reason as well.
Right. So I think besides my personal obstacles, such as fear, pure ignorance when going into buying my first property, would you say there are any other obstacles that I need to look out for maybe when trying to buy my first property?
The biggest obstacle, if one can call it that, is lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't buy property. That's actually the thing that I'm extremely passionate about. I really have a huge motivation and passion for more young people buying property and owning property in this country, because it's a fantastic thing to be able to pass on to future generations or to acquire wealth through property, etc. So lack of confidence is a big obstacle, where perhaps people would buy earlier if they had help and support in the process and felt more empowered. I think another obstacle is thinking that you need a lot more money than you do.
Right.
And that's also lack of knowledge. If you have advice and the amount that you need is far less than you perhaps think.
Right.
For a bond, and if you're in a partnership or a relationship, you can buy a property jointly, which also people perhaps don't realize, is that you can combine your income
right.
to a bond.
And
so
what is the minimum amount that one needs as a joint income?
It really depends how much you want to spend. It really depends how much you want to spend. It depends how much you put down as a deposit. But and those kind of are the numbers we can easily run with you. You see, that's also the kind of thing that perhaps first-time buyers don't realize, is that there are bond originators, as they're called, that literally pre-qualify you for the amount that you can spend. So you fill out a whole bunch of application forms. It's actually not very onerous. It's not like pages and pages. You fill out a couple of forms. Obviously, you have to give your income, verification of your income, and they know how much you will qualify for.
Right.
That's a free service, by the way, that people don't realize.
Okay.
It's a free service. So, and what's particularly nice about that, they can say to you, you can go out and spend 600,000 and you will qualify for a bond, or spend 1.5 million or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's a free service. And that already puts you in a position where you're more empowered. You're
Yeah.
going to the purchase more empowered.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I think, Nikki, and like you said, this is really your main motivation, being in the industry, is really just trying to educate us young people, you know, about how we can do this. And you said the biggest downfall or obstacle is the lack of confidence. So I think we're going to quickly run to an ad break, and maybe you have some advice for us how we can maybe gain confidence when speaking to people like you, because I think it's also, there's a lot of noise, you know, in our circles or on social media. A lot of people my age are already buying property. So the noise around it is really frightening as well. So maybe when we come back, you can speak a little bit more about that, but we're going to run to a quick ad break. As you know, we're speaking to Nikki Russos from Just Properties. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined, and we'll be back. Stay tuned.
Private Property celebrates women, the rule breakers, homemakers, and high flyers. Women who take up space. Women who kick off glass slippers to smash through glass ceilings. The woman who owns her own. This month, we honor women, proudly owning their own. Private Property, her space, her rules.
Hi, and welcome back to the First Time Homebuyer Show. I am still your host, Esti Klaassen, and we have the spectacular Nikki Russos. As you know, we're speaking about the factors that one needs to consider when buying their first home. And Nikki, today is, before the break, we spoke a little bit about the lack of confidence that we have as young people in society when buying our first home. So maybe, Nikki, if you've thought of anything that can maybe help us gain a little bit more confidence when buying our first property.
You know, the biggest thing is to just ask and not feel a sense of pressure. You, the client, and you, the buyer, to spend time with an agent that you're comfortable with, and ask as many questions as you want. Definitely don't choose an agent who's just in it for the next sale. Agents that are geared to answering your questions, really trying to understand where you're at and giving you the right information, giving you tables that you can understand what costs you're up against, and you know, helping you. And you know, we've got a process whereby we'd introduce you to the conveyancer, we'd introduce you to the bond originator way up front. You can spend 3 years trying to make up your mind. It's just to ask have all the questions answered. I can tell you that the people buying, the people that you're saying are around you, can be far less informed than they should be when they're buying properties. And that's sad in a way, because it's not necessary. There's absolutely no cost to you to ask questions.
Exactly. And I think that's always been our fear, you know, is just to ask and you shall know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so simple. So I think I just want to move on to, you know, being in this pandemic, and it's such a sad thing, because obviously some people my age have lost their jobs or you know, have not. But I think those who want to buy property in this time of the pandemic and everything happening around us with our economy in South Africa, do you think it's a good idea to actually invest in property right now?
It's the most exciting time that I've ever known in property to buy, for various reasons, Esti. Firstly, the interest rates are the lowest they've been in 50 years. We've always had incredibly high interest rates in this country. And now which means that it's borderline whether it's cheaper to buy than rent. If you do your maths around the particular property that you're interested in, of course you've got rates and taxes and levies to consider, but it's often cheaper to buy than to rent when you do the sums. So that's very exciting. The other thing that's extremely exciting, which makes buying attractive, is that sadly, a lot of people have had to sell their homes, and a lot of people have had to downsize. So there are a huge number of properties on the market. Mm-hmm. And as soon as there is an oversupply of properties relative to the demand, it means that prices drop. And that means that it's the best time to buy.
Right. So I should definitely consider buying right now.
It's the best time to buy if you can.
Yeah.
Prices might drop a little bit more because sellers are still, we're still struggling to sensitize sellers that they need to drop their prices to sell. But it's an incredible time to buy. I really believe in a couple of years you would have already made money and the prices would have increased already. So now's the time to buy.
Yeah. So I think, do you think it plays, this is just a question in my research, of property around South Africa and in and around South Africa, before, one of the questions that they said you should ask the seller is, or even the agent is, why has it been on the market for so long? If it has been on the market for so long, does that contribute in any way?
Sure. It's any question you want is valid. Often the reason though is just that the price has been wrong. So the price is right now, but perhaps the guy priced it too high for the market 6 months ago. And of course, we've had the lockdown since and etc. So he might have started marketing in February or March, and now it's already 6 months later. And it looks as if the property's been on the market for a long time. But you ask whatever you want. I mean, ask and just assess the answer and see if you're happy with that, as an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just before we close off everything, I think if there's maybe some advice that you have for people my age, or even, because I think what's so amazing about this platform and speaking to you is that there could be someone out there who has bought property before and knew absolutely nothing about what we just spoke about. And there are new buyers out there. So I think if there's anything, maybe one important factor that you can leave us with. Yeah.
So I'm going to say start buying as early as possible, as young as possible. Start getting into the market. Okay, that's one. The other thing, which is something that I'm not good at, is keep your emotions out of the buy, because I always want to buy something that I absolutely love and I pay too much and I overinvest and things like that. But honestly, if you want to make money from your purchase, your emotions have to be kept out of it as much as possible, and it needs to be a more rational purchase. But as soon as possible, start buying. As young as possible.
Investing, yeah. So start investing and buying, yeah.
And just start. This program that Private Property is running is really exceptional, because this is exactly what's needed for people to understand and learn and become more empowered and confident.
Exactly. And I think what I would like to take from the conversation, and just speaking to you, because you've taught me so much in the past few minutes than I knew before I started this. And I think what I really took from you was your motivation for buying. And make sure, obviously, that, and I understand what you mean by keeping your emotions out of it entirely, but that becomes very difficult throughout the process. So always someone just to nudge you and say, oh, okay, so someone like you nudging you and reminding you that if this is what you want it for, you don't need to necessarily have so many emotions attached to this buy, or, so I think really just knowing your motivation for buying.
Yeah.
And that's something you said, sorry.
Important.
Yeah, because that's something you said you didn't have when you first bought your first home.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely amazing. And maybe just before we close off, if there's any contact information that you have for us to contact you, or people who are watching, just to contact you if you do, because I did see you have a LinkedIn profile.
Yes, we do. I do have a LinkedIn profile. Are you happy for us to share the office number? Should I do
Yeah,
that?
sure. We can do your email and your office number. I'm just waiting for the question, so you can share that in the meantime.
So the office number is 011 467 5923. We're always happy to help. Doesn't matter how many questions you ask. You can either ask on the phone or come into the office and sit down and have a cup of coffee with us. No problem. Or as long
And
as
this is all free of charge. If I need this advice.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Amazing. And I think it's so amazing that, I can just come in and ask you for help. And because a lot of people, everything nowadays involves a certain cost, and that's so a lot of us don't have that.
We love it. We love someone who's enthusiastic about property. We completely, absolutely love helping from scratch. So really, it's no issue whatsoever. If you'd like to email me instead, my email address is Nikki, NICCIR @just.property. NICCIR @just.property.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll leave your information down below after the show as well for them to contact you. And I think that's all we have time for this evening. So I think to do a quick recap, Nikki, as you said before, this is definitely the perfect platform to us to learn more about property. And if anyone has more questions after the show or any ideas of what you'd like to know about in the up and coming shows, please do leave them down below and we'll definitely try and tackle those ideas that you have. But unfortunately for now, that's all we have time for. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And yes, I'd love to actually sit down and have that cup of coffee with you, please.
Please do. And to all those buyers out there or prospective buyers, people that are thinking about it, please just phone us, raise the questions, come and sit with us and chat. Feel free to do so and start making the moves.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nikki. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place. Thank you so much. Bye, Nikki.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Brian Kepper. I'm a 10-time South African motorcycling champion. My family and I have chosen to live in Fourways. There's some really great suburbs in our neighborhood. There's a lot of families living in the surrounding areas in places like Lone Hill and Cedar Lakes. What draws people to Cedar Lakes is that it's so close to Broadacre Shopping Centre, Cedar Square and Fourways Life Hospital. Lone Hill is a major draw card for many families. It's got some great smaller commercial centres and some fantastic schools like Crawford College. From an entertainment point of view, Monte Casino really comes alive at night. There's so much on the go and there's an incredible energy in the area. Our family just loves the fast-paced lifestyle that Fourways brings. But honestly, the thing that attracted us most to this area was the active lifestyle that it offers. As a family, we've chosen to live in Fourways because of the lifestyle and convenience, and this is our neighborhood.
Private Property celebrates women, the rule breakers, homemakers, and high flyers. Women who take up space. Women who kick off glass slippers to smash through glass ceilings. The woman who owns her own. This month we honor women, proudly owning their own. Private Property, her space, her rules.